Great. So I think we should get started. So hi everyone, this is Max. Always Max to keep you company every Thursday night to be the host of every lecture. And for today, we have a special guest here. Let's give our biggest welcome to Professor Wang Yang, the Vice President of HKUST. He's also the Global Advisor of Huobi. Hi, Prof. Would you like to say hi to everyone?
Hello. Hey,
Yeah.
everyone. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, actually, Professor Wang Yang was in our opening ceremony for Blockchain Academy. He's also the advisor and our really, really good backers of the program. Thanks, Prof. And since we have a lot of newcomers today, we would like to give a very brief intro of Blockchain Academy. So basically, Blockchain Academy is an NGO program trying to teach every university students, crypto lovers about blockchain. We're going to deliver the lectures in every aspect, including the ecosystems, the Solidity, Rust, Move programming languages, different chains, different cryptocurrencies, different projects, and so on. So if you'd like to join us, please go to our community. Our assistants were going to post a community link into the chat box. So please do check that, join the community, and keep tuned for our further projects and further activities. Okay, and that's all for Blockchain Academy. Today is also the 5th lecture of Build Camp. So for all campers, hi everyone. And if you like to claim your SBT of the 5th class, please go to the website and you're going to be able to claim that without any password. But it will only be open to you for a very few times. So yeah, please do that right now. And right now, let's go to today's main topic. It is a Web3 public class. We have our special guest here, Professor Wang Yang. He's going to deliver a speech about Web3 and blockchain using English for 45 minutes. And we have another part of today's lecture, which is an open forum. And it is our great honor to also invite Professor James, a blockchain expert, and also the Hong Kong UST adjunct professor. And we also invited Mr. Jerry, the founder of Steppen. I'm sure you guys know the project, right? And also Mr. Jack Khan, the founder of Nano Labs. Also, Mr. Duncan, the member of the Legislative Council of Hong Kong. So we really look forward to the speech as well as with the forum. By the way, the forum we're going to be in Chinese. So yeah, that's all for my introduction. Just hand it over to Professor. Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you, everyone. So today I'm going to give a quick introduction to blockchain. I know many of you have already, been having extensive conversation and contact and discussion on blockchain, but I'm also pretty certain that many of you do not actually fully understand the mathematical principle or what is going on in blockchain, actually the details. So it's so today I'm going to use pretty much trying to be as simple as I can to explain to you what is behind a blockchain. And from a mathematical point of view, and from essentially the technical side, just a little bit. So I'm not going to make the lecture overly technical. However, I hope after this lecture, you can truly feel confident that you actually know what's going on, at least the basics of a blockchain. So nobody, when you heard all these terms, you know exactly what is meant. Okay, so let me share my screen. Share screen. Where's my screen? So, oh, I think it's this one. Okay. All right, can you, Max, can you see it?
Yeah, definitely. It's perfect.
Okay, good. All right. So, so I changed the name a little bit. So hello, everyone. I changed the name a little bit to Fundamentals of Blockchain. So this is really an introductory lecture on what is actually happening with blockchain. Okay, so what is fundamentals behind a blockchain? All right. So the topics include the fundamentals of blockchain and Bitcoin, and the current development of blockchain, and also what happened with financial markets and blockchain. You undoubtedly have already heard quite a bit about what's happening in recently around the world. Okay. So let me start off on Bitcoin. So this is actually most of you already know this is the first blockchain essentially. Now, what is Bitcoin? Okay, so let me give you just a quick introduction. So why do we even have Bitcoin? Okay. So the situation is the following. Okay, so the main question Bitcoin, the blockchain tried to address was the following. Suppose we want to establish trust. Okay, how do we do that if we don't have a leader? Okay. Now think about it. If we have leaders, then this wouldn't be a problem. Okay. So we just defer this to the leader, and the leader serve as a trusted sort of the center of trust, right? You go to basically that's what happens. So the leader has a huge responsibility, and because he shoulders the trust of the whole group. And if the leader turns out to be not trustworthy, then something will happen. Okay, you're seeing a lot of fraud is because people have to trust someone whom they view to be completely trustworthy, but then the person turned out to be fraudulent and completely not trustworthy, then something happened. Okay, so but think about this. Suppose you don't have a leader. Suppose you just have a group of strangers who don't even know each other, who may not even like each other. Okay, so how do you build a trust among this group? Okay, so essentially, the inception of blockchain was trying to answer this question, and the Bitcoin blockchain was exactly created to answer this question. And it started off with something concerning a digital, concerning a ledger. Okay, so it's really the trust is really built using public ledger. Okay, so transactions. Okay, so you have a ledger of transactions. How do you trust this thing is authentic, it's not changed, and everything? Okay, so suppose A borrowed $10,000 from B. You put in a ledger, and then you do all these. How do you know I can trust that? In the future, it doesn't. I cannot even change it if I want to. Okay, and how do I know it actually happened? Okay, so all these you need the transparency. You need to have trust in a system where you don't have a leader. Okay. So Satoshi Nakamoto in 2008 proposed this blockchain idea. So the title is Bitcoin, a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. Okay. Now today we still don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto is, or whether this is even one person. Okay. Anyway, that's a different story. So the paper was published in 2008, and the Bitcoin blockchain went live on January 3rd, 2009. All right, so this the whole idea is this is decentralized because there's no leader, there's no center. Okay, so it's essentially among a group of people who don't even know each other, who don't trust each other. And it's done through a distributed, through a what we call distributed system. Okay? And I'll explain what actually happened later on. And it does achieve, in this system, first of all, it's transparent, completely transparent, and it's tamper-proof. You cannot go back and change things. Okay? It's just very impossible to do. And the other thing is actually secure. Okay, So to move the blockchain Bitcoin chain along, to push this forward, a miner, what we call a miner, is who create this new block will be awarded Bitcoins. Okay. So later, of course, some other improvements and a new blockchain have been introduced. Improvement like smart contract and other things. So we will talk about this later on. Okay. Now, so what is blockchain? How does it do it? Okay. So before we understand what a blockchain is, we have to understand what is a hash function. Okay, so this is called the cryptographic hash function. Okay, so I don't know how many of you have already mastered the idea of what is a hash function. The mathematics behind the hash function is pretty well. I wouldn't say it's extremely difficult, but it is complicated to explain here. So we'll skip that. But the idea of a hash function is almost like a serial number for a digital document. Okay, so you give me anything digital, I can assign a hash, a serial number. Okay, think about that. Okay, so we go to, we buy a car. The car has a serial number, so we know, where this car comes from. Of course, its serial number can be altered. I mean, there are techniques you can alter this serial number, but for hash function, it works for digital content, and it's not unlike serial number, which is assigned by the manufacturer for goods. The hash number here, which serve as a serial number, okay, is obtained mathematically. Okay, so if you give me a digital document, basic a string of bits, right? Then there is a unique number called hash number, okay? And this hash number has the following properties, okay? First of all, it's computed very fast, okay? We can typically do compute a hash number very quickly, and it's unique. Okay? It's unique in the sense that if you have two identical documents, okay, you get exactly the same hash number. Okay? And just like a serial number, and it has on the other direction. That is, let's say you have two different digital documents, or two digital document, two completely different, or even differ slightly, then the hash number will most likely be different. So, so the most likely means, in theory, they can actually be different, but in practice, it doesn't happen. And I'll explain why in practice it doesn't happen unless you find a way to hack it. Okay. It does the hash number itself magnify differences. Let's say, I'll show some example where you have a tiny bit of two documents have very tiny difference. For instance, two exactly identical documents. However, they differ by a space. In some place, there is an extra space. Then the hash number becomes totally different. Okay, you can clearly see that these two documents are very different. Okay. So these hash numbers are what we call one-way function, or cryptonic function, because if you give me a document, I can easily, very, very quickly compute its hash number. However, if you give me a hash number, there's almost no way for me to come up with a document that has that hash number. Okay, it's called one way. You can solve A to B, but you cannot go B to A. Okay, so this hash number first appeared around 1990s. Okay, and some of them have proven to be not so secure. Okay, in other words, not only I can do A to B, but I can also do B to A, which was not supposed to happen. Okay, it's supposed only one way. You can only go from A to B, but you cannot go back knowing B to know what A is. but some of the earlier hash number generators have been broken. So in other words, you can actually find two different documents that have the same hash number. Okay. Today we use something called a hash function called SHA-256. This is this was established, developed in 2001, and is still very widely used. So far, it still looks quite secure. Now, many of you still want to know a little bit about what this hash number is. Okay, so I actually found this Sylvester video, which I think kind of describe what a hash number is supposed to be. So why don't I just play the video? Okay. All right, so you have seen this, okay? So let me explain why this is this give you an idea what hash number is. So you take an idea, okay, let's say you have this document, it's a simple number, and you make a series of very, very complex operations, okay? Mathematically, sophisticated operations to a point that you can no longer predict its outcome. Okay. Like in this case, Sylvester, was hoping that this ball would hit the Tweety bird, but actually it fell, on himself. So that shows unpredictability, and that's exactly the point. The hash function wants the whole outcome to be completely unpredictable. Okay, so. So let me just continue with hash function. So here, as I said, a hash function converts everything. Basically converts a digital document into a string of digits of fixed length. The string is called a hash value. Okay, so for the one I talk about, SHA-256, it converts into a binary string of length 256. Okay, and you can think of a hash as a password. Okay, think about it. Just essentially, well, not a path, maybe as a serial number. Okay, a hash function also means decoding. Okay, decryption is virtually impossible. In other words, you can know the hash value, but you cannot reconstruct what this document is. Okay? This is a really important concept. Okay, it's one way. Okay? From A, you can get B, but from knowing B, you cannot find A. So if you have A1 and A2 are different, you're going to B1 and B2. Okay, different. But in neither case, you can figure out what is A1 and what is A2. Okay. So the applications of these hash functions are numerous. Of course, today, blockchain is completely based on hash function and also digital signature, for instance. And of course, I already mentioned the most very commonly used hash function, including the SHA-256. And later on, I'm pretty sure if we have more computational power, and if people feel SHA-256 is no longer safe, we'll go to the next one, which is SHA-512. Okay, let me give you some example. Okay, so let's say we have put in the ledger, Bob send Alice $100 and Bob received from 199.99 from John. Okay, so this is something you just put in this ledger. That's a digital document, and you can see on the right hand side is SHA-256, the hash value. Now you wonder why this is not 256 digits of 0, 1. Instead, we use hex. Okay, so hex means each letter here corresponds to 0 through 15. That means it represents 4 binary digits. Okay, so 0 is just 0, 0, 0, 0. 1 is 0, 0, 0, 1, all the way to 9. Okay, then you run out of, because you need 16, so you run out of digits. In that case, you use A, B, C, D, E, F to complete the 16. So this is the hex system. Okay, and so you put a math formula here. That's another digital document. You can see it gives you a very different hash number. And if you say Bob is stupid, it gives you a hash number like that. But if you say Bob is smart, it gives you a totally different hash number. Okay, hash value. And the Bob is handsome, it's the same thing. Here the last one is North Korean leader Kim Il-jung. Kim Jong-un just state that the nuclear button is on his desk at all times, and blah blah blah. And if you put this, this is clearly a digital document, and you input it, you spit out a hash number. You can see every one of these hash numbers are very different. Okay, even though you say Bob is smart and Bob is stupid, it looks at least the first two words are the same. Okay, but it looks very different. Okay, all right. So now let's see what happened to a blockchain. Okay, how this hash function is used for blockchain. Okay, blockchain, as I said earlier, for Satoshi Nakamoto, it was really a digital ledger, in a decentralized ledger. Okay, so the ledger can have different entries. It can say Bob borrowed $100 from Alice, just previously, for instance, and here Bob gave Alice 100. Bob borrowed from John, 199.99. Okay, something like this. Okay, and you can list a bunch of things. Okay, so this is one of the blocks. Here I have block 64. It could be block N. Okay, not the first block. It can, of course, we also have the first block, which is called the Genesis block. Okay, so this is block 64, which is listed here. Okay, here we use French, of course. So we say for this block inside we list block 64. And then the previous, because you already have a block before 64. Okay, now what is the block? This is block 63. Actually, let's look at block 65. Okay, so you can see block 65, we put in, first we put here, say block 65. Okay, you can put in Chinese or whatever you want. Okay, but there is an indication that that's block 65. Okay, and then because before that there is already a block before 65, which is block 64. What do you do with that? You put the hash number of block 64 inside this block. This connects these two blocks together. It means block 65 contains the entire information of block 64. Not contain the entire, contain the hash of the entire function. But we already know if you alter block 64, the hash will change. Okay. In other words, if this hash number is already here, okay, you cannot just go back later, tamper with block 64, because if you tamper with block 64, you're going to change the hash number, which will no longer be corresponding to this hash number, which will have a problem. Okay, we will immediately know that this has been tampered with. Okay, So since it's distributive, this tamper block will be immediately disqualified and destroyed and be replaced with the original. It's not just one copy because it's distributive, so there are thousands of copies out there. If you just tamper one block, it's just not going to work. Okay. So then afterwards, you list whatever transactions you want to put on the ledger. Okay, like Bob gave Alice 100, Bob borrowed from John 200, blah, blah, blah. You fill the whole block, which is like 1 megabytes. Okay, you fill the whole thing. Okay. And then it's not, you have to, you actually have to do what we call proof of work, or POW, okay, which I'm going to explain. Okay, this is one of the most crucial parts. Okay, one of the most so-called proof of work. So you create this block. Okay, then you add the hash number of this block, just so you can see it's almost impossible here to tamper. Okay, so then you create this block. Okay, so what do you get if you actually create the block? That means you move the chain. We call if you watch American football, there is a term called move the chain. Okay, means you get a new first down. Okay, and you move the chain. So as a reward for moving the chain, you get some block. You actually get some Bitcoins. Okay, so essentially you can see that in the beginning, Bitcoins are fairly easy to come by. We'll get to this later. Let's just say you receive some Bitcoins, and then we'll talk about the mechanism later on. Okay, so you get some Bitcoin, but we all know that Bitcoin is valuable. So if anybody can mint the block and move the chain, of course I will do it. I like to do it because I get some Bitcoin. Okay, so in fact, I get several Bitcoins, right? So of course, I want to be the guy who creates this chain. But people like you have all been thinking the same way. They all want to be the guy who actually created this block and receive some Bitcoin. Okay? So there is a competition now. See who should be rewarded that block. And that's where you're supposed to do an exercise. It's like an exam, okay? You have to do some homework or do an exam. Whoever, is the first one to finish the homework gets rewarded this block. This is what we call a consensus mechanism. A consensus, we have to build a consensus because remember, there is no central. There's no leader say, oh, John should get this block or Bob should get this block. It's all based on consensus mechanism, based on an algorithm, essentially. Okay, so what is its algorithm? Okay, so this is what we call a POW. Okay, so let me explain what happened. Okay, so let's say you have a ledger, you put all the stuff in here, payment to be sent directly from one party, blah, 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 blah. You put in, Bob borrowed, $200 from John and blah, blah. You filled all this ledger, okay? Now, there is an exercise for the first one to complete, which is to say, you need to put additional documents at the end, or additional text, or additional, digital contents at the end, which are called X, okay? So that when you run through the hash number, it will have first many to be 0. Okay, so here, well, I don't know about now, but maybe a year ago or so, is the first 72 digits of the 256 digits are required to be 0. Okay. Whoever complete this brain tease or this homework will be rewarded with that block. Okay, so that's you think it's very easy, right? You just have to find the text, find some additional text which are called X, so that when you run the SHA-56, you get the first 76 digits to be 0. By the way, the 76 digits are also changing all the time. Okay, it's like the longer, the harder the exercise. Okay, so if you require 100 digits to be 0, then it becomes a really hard problem. But if you just require 4 digits to be 0, then it's really easy. The whole point of changing the requirement is to make sure that a new block is created about every 10 minutes. Okay, so that's the only kind of consideration here. Okay, so and then it depends how often, how powerful your computation can be to actually solve this problem. So this is proof of work, POW. Okay, you need to work. In other words, okay, you will have to show the world that you actually did the work. And but finding this X, there is essentially no algorithm. As I said, knowing this is what I want on the right-hand side. I cannot reconstruct on the left what I want. Okay, there is just no way, you don't know, okay, because it's a one-way function. Given any X, I know what my hash number is, but if I want to achieve this hash number, there is no way mathematically I could solve for X. Okay, so what do? Well, just essentially the trial and error. It's almost like generating a random number until you hit the jackpot. Okay, so what people do is to try just randomly generate these X until you hit one with the required property, namely the first 76 digits to be 0. Okay? That's the only way. And of course, whoever can do this fast will be rewarded more often with Bitcoins. Okay, and how do you do it fast? Okay, you use a computer. And in, at one time, even the Russian, missile command, the strategic nuclear missile command, they have a supercomputer. They use those supercomputers to mine Bitcoin. Okay, so this is called mining. Okay, mining simply, Bitcoin mining simply means you try different X until you hit the jackpot, namely the first 76 digits to be 0. But these are actually inefficient. The most efficient ones are dedicated mining machines that does only one thing. They use most advanced 7 nanometer or even 5 nanometer microchips. It does only one thing: churn out, a random number and its hash number. That's all it does. Okay, so it goes very, very fast. In fact, if you want to make sure you actually get these, to be successful in POW exercises, you want to get these mining machines. Okay, so the mining machines are very expensive when the Bitcoin becomes very expensive, and then it drops in price when Bitcoin's price comes down. Okay, like now the Bitcoin price is a bit down, but still pretty high. Okay, so the machines are not cheap. Okay, so so now you know what's going on with Bitcoin. By the way, Bitcoin every 4 years it cuts the supply by half. Okay, so so it starts off with 100. Okay, so you mine a block, you get 100 and then 50 and 25. 12.5 and 6.25. Okay, so which is what we have now. And but because it's a halving mechanism and it's the blocks are created every 10 minutes, the total supply of Bitcoins is finite, is limited. Okay, there is an upper bound. This is just simple mathematics. Okay. And it's also, completely decentralized. Okay, so we call these chains permissionless because anybody can join the blockchain, can be a miner, or can put their put the transactions in the ledger, for example. Okay, anybody can join. It's called permissionless. Okay, so Bitcoin, of course, because of 10 minutes per block, it's actually quite inefficient. Okay, so when we calculate how many transactions can be processed, it comes down to about transaction per second, 7 transactions per second, because each block is limited to 1 megabyte. Okay, and also this mining now, because a lot of people view this as a total waste of energy, because you have to run the computer to actually mine the coins. To run these computers, they eat up a lot of electricity. So it's really a huge, to many, okay, it's a huge energy waste, okay. But of course, others would argue differently, because many have been using abandoned, hydroelectric plants to mine coins, and they actually claim we're green finance, because we actually have created jobs for these impoverished regions, who have abandoned, hydroelectric stations. Okay, so one little bit interesting thing, on May 22nd, 2010, this guy Laszlo Hanyecz bought 2 pizza with 10,000 Bitcoin. Okay, think about how much it's worth at 20,000, per coin. Okay, so it's essentially 200 million. Okay, well, at that time when I wrote this, it's 70. Now it's actually more than that. Okay, So because of some of the limitations, actually the Bitcoin is unlikely to be of great commercial value, although there are some technologies that are trying to put stacks in it to actually make it more useful commercially. In recent years, after the Bitcoin, actually there is a new consensus mechanism, new blockchains being introduced, the most famous of which is Ethereum. Okay, and they also included new features such as smart contracts. Okay, then there are also so-called private alliance chains, because the blockchain, the idea is, it doesn't have to be decentralized. The idea of tamper-proof, it can be achieved also in a centralized chain and also in an alliance chain. Okay, so for alliance chain, you don't have the problem of you don't know anybody, you cannot trust anybody. Okay, so this goes to my second topic. Okay, so as I mentioned today, there are different kind of consensus mechanisms. So POW is many consider to be too slow and waste too much energy. So and you can also see that the POW, whoever gets how many blocks or Bitcoin you mine is actually equivalent to how much computational power you possess. Okay, the ones with more computational power, more resources, you'll get more Bitcoin. Okay? So because it's just completely computational power driven. Okay, so then this idea came up. Instead of using POW, why don't we just use something called a proof of stake, which means that I know how much resources you have. So I'm going to award blocks in a probabilistic way, randomly, based on proportional to how much stake you have on the chain. Okay, so instead of being proof of W is essentially proportional to how much computational power you own, which is also equivalent to how much stake or how much resources you have. POS peel away this whole thing, simply say, forget the proof of work. We know it's proportional to how much computational power you have, or in other words, how much money you have. Okay, so I'm just going to reward blocks proportional to randomly, of course randomly, but proportional to how much stake you have on this chain. okay, which in many cases can be viewed as more or less equivalent to POW. Not quite, but more or less. Okay. Then you have others like delegate, DPoS and Byzantine fault tolerant, etc. Okay, various different consensus mechanisms. And then also popping up this centralized, here I should really say centralized or semi-centralized. Okay, so these are so-called private blockchains. For instance, JP Morgan has its own blockchain. Anybody can have its own blockchain. Our university has our own blockchain for certificates, for example. Okay, and then you can also have a consortium alliance chain. You get a lot of several key players which you can trust. Say all the banks, okay, all the banks who have certain amount of stake to be to create a chain with these guys as the stakeholders, okay, and we call these permission blockchains, okay, because you need permission. Not anybody can join to be a stakeholder there, okay. And so the centralized chains do offer some advantages and some, of course, disadvantages as well. Okay, the advantages are that there can be much more efficient, and trust is no longer an issue because it's either centralized. You're yourself. Okay, you are the one who called the shot, and people have to trust you. Okay, and of course, you try to be as trustworthy as possible. If it's alliance, most of these alliance, they know each other, so they build trust that way. Okay, and have fewer nodes. Okay, because in a decentralized permissionless chain, everybody can be a node. Okay, but here, you just have a few alliance members or just one person or one organization as a node. Okay, so generally they don't need to offer cryptocurrency. Remember, Bitcoin is used to create new blocks, to push the chain forward, to move the chain. But here, because it's centralized, because of alliance, you don't need that. You don't need to offer any cryptocurrency. Okay, and also it's easy to regulate. Okay, decentralized, many would consider to be difficult to regulate, although there are many ways you can still regulate somehow, but still there are lingering issues of illicit activities in the eyes of many. Okay, so some perceive, some real, some perceive. Okay, and the other thing is I already said TPS efficiency, and it can essentially, for a centralized chain, it should be able to meet almost any commercial demand. Okay, with of course, you need to have, as long as you enough computational power. Okay, trust is no longer. However, it does often face different type of security problems. Actually, one of the interesting thing is in the decentralized permissionless blockchain, it's very difficult to hack. Okay, for example, Bitcoin has not been hacked at all. Okay, and but in for central chain, there is it faces a different problem. It could very possible that one day it's being hacked. Okay, so so this kind of thing, you do face a different security concern. What is my personal view? I think in the future you will see the coexistence of and widespread business application in both decentralized blockchains and alliance chains. Okay, so here is very quick, very quick comparison of these different chains. Okay, you can see this is already I talk about. Okay, so public chain, consortium chain, private chain. Okay, and one thing, as I said, cryptocurrency. In public chain, you have cryptocurrency. In the others, you don't. Okay. Now, finally, I just want to talk about stable coin. Okay, so because if you look at Ethereum, there are a lot of commercial activities on Ethereum. Okay, however, the Ethereum in which a lot of the transactions done in Ether in the ETH, they can be fluctuating, very volatile. Okay, so in order to have stable business application, you actually need some coins that are stable. Okay, this is called a stable coin. Okay, that are pegged typically into a fiat money like US dollars or some assets. Okay, like gold, for example. Okay, and there are also stable coins based on algorithm. Okay, which we'll talk about. And so there are major types of stable. Stable coins become sort of the daily used coin, for transaction. Okay? So so you can see there are essentially different kind of stable coin. One, which is most people would prefer to see, are the fiat money backed stable coins. Okay, typically USDT, USDC. These are backed by US dollars. Okay. And then you have crypto-backed stablecoin. Okay, so yeah, I don't have real US dollars behind, but I have enough Bitcoins behind for back. Okay, so like a DAI, for example. Okay, and then you have stablecoin that based on algorithm, has no backing of anything. Okay, like Lunar USD. Okay. So clearly the third kind is getting less popular because of the collapse of Luna UST. Okay, so these algorithmic stable coins are now being under scrutiny because of the danger of collapsing. Okay, and which actually the first of such case happened on in May 2022 when UST completely collapsed. Okay. Now, what happened? Okay, so the collapse is also very simple. Okay, so it's a complex process. I'm not going to spend too much time to talk about. Okay, basically there is a coin called Luna. Okay, and then you also have a stable coin that's pegged to Luna. Okay, so think of Luna as a way as its backing of the UST. Okay, so how do you control the price of UST? Okay, so if the UST theoretically is $1, but let's say it drops to 0.98, then the algorithm or speculators would have basically the algorithm would buy UST by selling Luna. Okay, in that case, it will prop up the price of UST to $1. If it goes above, then it will do the opposite. Okay, and so what happened was actually on May 7th, some people begin a large sell-off of UST, okay, causing a depegging because it's sell too hard, and a lot of people start to get UST to exchange for $1 worth of Luna. Okay, now that causes a tremendous impact. It has a depegging, then just spiraled out of control essentially. So in the end, it became depeg and USD just went to essentially to zero, and so Luna just completely collapsed. You can see from the figure here, the USD essentially went to zero very quickly. Okay, so any kind of stable algorithmic stable coin may not be so stable after all. Okay, so I think that's the end of my talk. So I hope I have given you a good overview and a mathematical, explain the mathematical principle behind blockchain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. I think it's really, really a fruitful talk for everyone of us here. Great. I think that's the end of our speech session. And next, let's go to the next session, which would be a Chinese forum about Web3 and digital economy.